This year, we're only buying gifts for your brother's kids. My mother giggled at Christmas. Then I watched their children unwrap iPads, while mine sat empty-handed. The next day, I got a text saying, "We need to talk." My name's Daniel. I'm 32. And the year my family decided fairness meant giving everything to the golden child. I watched my kids sit through Christmas empty-handed, while my brother's children unwrapped iPads and designer jackets, with their initials stitched on the sleeves. For as long as I remember, my family runs on a simple equation. Oliver shines. And the rest of us orbit. He's the story everyone tells Captain at school. First to buy a condo. The one mom calls our miracle. I'm the guy they call when the Wi-Fi blinks or a lamp won't turn on. It isn't even malicious half the time, it's like gravity. You don't see it. But you feel it in your ribs. Last Christmas, I tried to shake that gravity. I told my wife, Lena, that this year would be normal. We'd show up with gifts. We'd stay for cocoa. We'd take the kids home before anyone got overtired. We saved for weeks. Lena crocheted matching forest green scarves for my parents, each with a little fringe that she tugged straight with her thumb. I tracked down a rare vinyl my dad had hunted since 1986, a first pressing with a nick on the corner, he always mentioned like an old friend. We even bought Oliver's kids, the Lego spaceship they'd pointed at in a catalog. The one that said $129.99 before tax. We'll go in generous, I said. We'll set the tone. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine when we walked in. The kind of scent that makes you think maybe this time will be different. My arms were full of wrapped boxes. Lena nudged the door with her hip while our daughters, Nora, balanced a tin of ginger cookies, like treasure. Theo, my 6-year-old, held the vinyl flat against his chest with both hands, so it wouldn't bend. I saw the tree first, the same old glass icicles. The monogrammed stockings. And under it, a mountain of presents stacked in neat columns of glossy paper. It looked like a department store window. I breathed in and told myself, see, this is what normal looks like. Mom stepped forward, smoothing her hair, and crouched to Nora's eye level. Sweetheart, she said, soft enough that I leaned in to hear. We couldn't afford gifts for you and Theo this year. Things have been tight. I felt Lena's hand slip into mine. A warning. The kids both nodded because they're polite because we've taught them to be. I smiled so they'd keep nodding and said, hey, we're here for family. Presents are extra. 2 minutes later, Oliver's son ripped the paper off an iPad and yelled like he'd scored the winning goal. His daughter held up a jacket with her initials stitched in cream thread on the cuff, glowing at her reflection in the glass of the TV. New sneakers. More boxes. Everyone laughed and clapped. Dad did this chuckle. He saves for good times. And said to me, you know, times are hard. I looked down at my kids. Nora had folded her hands in her lap the way Lena does at church. Theo clutched the vinyl like a raft. I told myself none of this mattered. But the words had splinters. When we left that night, my father hugged me on the porch and said, next year will be better. The same way you talk to someone whose team keeps losing. He had a peppermint on his breath and a bonus check in his wallet. He'd told me about it over coffee earlier. An extra $3. 000 for the quarter. But I didn't argue. I buckled the kids into the car and drove home with the radio off, listening to the rustle of their jackets. A week later, at Sunday brunch, Mom cleared her throat and stood up. We were at a place with chalkboard menus and $14 omelets. Steam blurred the window and made the world outside look like it was underwater. We're starting a family fund, she announced, tapping a spoon against her glass. Everyone chips in monthly. Emergencies. Birthdays. Maybe a vacation. Just to keep things fair. Oliver added. It could help with big-ticket stuff. Tablets for the kids. Parties. He didn't look at me when he said it, which made it worse. That afternoon, Dad texted. Since Oliver's kids have big expenses this month, maybe you could double your first contribution. Just to get us rolling. I stared at the screen. Double. For the kids who had opened a mountain of gifts while mine had sat on their hands. I typed and deleted so many times. The bubble probably looked like a heartbeat. If this had been the first time, I might have swallowed it. But patterns are stubborn. They leave receipts. May 3rd, Mom called at 9:17 p.m. Dan. I know it's last minute. But could you swing by first thing and put together the outdoor heater before Oliver's barbecue? He's hosting 15 people. Event over at UA. Before work. Tighten 12 bolts. And found a $25 gift card to a coffee chain on the table with a note. You're a lifesaver. That night I learned Mom had given Oliver $400 for food and chairs, so it would be done right. When I asked why the fund for right never seemed to include me, she said, "You're good at making do." The sentence landed like a door clicking shut. June 12th, Oliver called me from the dealership. "I'm short on the down payment," he said. Voice low. "Just $600 to bridge." Dad's teed up. I told him I couldn't. I had a dentist bill and Theo's summer camp deposit due on Friday. He sighed. "You know I'll pay you back. By Sunday." Dad had co-signed the loan. Mom later said, almost cheerful, "It's family. We help where help matters most." She didn't notice I'd stopped stirring my tea. August 28th. A group chat blew up at 1042 p.m. For our parents' anniversary. Oliver suggested we split the bill for a dinner at a steak place downtown, say $90 each. Not including drinks. I said Lena and I could host a backyard dinner instead, and let the kids run around. Total cost maybe $40 if we all cooked something. 2 dots appeared. Then Mom texted privately. "Don't fight it. It's one night." That weekend, she posted photos from a surprise party. I didn't know about balloons, gold, as trophies. A cake with edible glitter. Someone tagged me. "Wish you were here," Oliver wrote. I wasn't invited. I should have known December wouldn't change anything. The calendar doesn't fix the math. Still. Hope is a habit you don't notice until it hurts. Lena told me. If we go with a plan. And we did. We would arrive on time and leave on time. We would not try to outgive anyone. We would let the night be what it was. The night of the makeup dinner. The table looked like a wedding catalog. Candles. Silverware aligned like soldiers. Against the wall. A tower of wrapped boxes. Tags facing out. The kids moved closer without meaning to. Pulled by the shine. I let myself believe. Just for a breath. That some of them were for Nora and Theo. My daughter slid her chair an inch. As if nearness could change the labels. Paper flew. Oliver's kids found headphones. Clothes. A game console that made them shout. Nora's face changed in slow motion. It's a look I hope I never see again the moment her hope learned long division. I asked Mom quietly. "Where are my kids' gifts?" She smiled. "The polite kind that you use with strangers. We'll get them something once the fund is set up." She said. "We don't want things to feel unfair." Unfair. The word sat on my tongue like something sour. I stood. "We're leaving," I said. Oliver laughed. Thinking it was a joke. Mom tilted her head like she hadn't heard right. I picked up our coats. Theo slipped his arms into his sleeves without looking away from the tower of boxes. We walked past it. Past the tree. Past the smell of cinnamon that now made my stomach turn. That night. Back home. I muted the family chat. I stopped answering calls. Something in me had snapped quietly. Like a thin wire, you only notice once the picture frame starts tilting. I went to work overtime at the shop. Side jobs on Saturdays. Greasy Sunday mornings changing oil in a borrowed bay for cash. Lena kept track in a notebook with a blue elastic strap. We put the money in a plain envelope box at the top of the pantry labeled garage. Every time I dropped in a folded bill, I could almost hear a door open. The thing I remember most from those months isn't the long hours or the cracked hands. It's a small square of paper Nora taped to the fridge, a sketch of a car with big, friendly eyes, and the words, "Dan's Honest Garage," in purple marker. She drew a tiny wrench under the O. I carried that logo in my wallet like a photograph. By spring, we had signed a short lease on a narrow space with peeling paint and one duct that groaned in cold weather. We scrubbed the floor until it stopped turning rags black. We rolled on 2 coats of gray paint. I saved for a jack with a lift range I'd never had before. Theo stocked a little shelf with coloring books and a jar of hard candy for customers' kids. The cheap kind that tastes like childhood and dentist lectures. The first month we booked out 2 weeks. By month 6 we were scheduling oil changes into the next month. I caught myself humming under my breath when I locked up at night. A tune with no name. And then the phone rang again. Mom's voice arrived, sugared the way it gets when she's about to ask for something big. "Family dinner," she said. "Big announcement. And Daniel." Since your business is doing so well, maybe you could kick off the family fund with a generous contribution. I said. Sure. What I meant was I'll bring more than you expect. On the drive over, Nora asked if there would be candles. Probably. I said. The ones that drip wax like tears. She laughed. I put my hand out, and she placed hers in it for a second. Warm and small. Before turning back to the window, Lena squeezed my knee. Whatever happens, she said, we're already okay. I should have known I'd never get the apology I kept wanting. Apologies don't change people built on gravity. But truth can. Truth, laid out plainly, has its own weight. I had collected it, hidden in screenshots and saved voicemails, and a neat folder in my coat. Not to humiliate, or to win, just to put the story on the table where everyone could see it. I parked half a block from my parents' place, so we wouldn't get boxed in by the usual line of cars. The air had that late spring coolness that tricks you into thinking you don't need a jacket. I slid the folder deeper into my coat anyway, feeling the ridge of the stapled corner against my ribs. Lena squeezed my hand once. Whatever they expect, she said. Give them something true. Nora and Theo hopped over the cracks in the sidewalk, counting quietly, 7, 8, 9, as if the numbers could keep them safe. Inside, the house wore its best face. A runner of white lilies down the center of the dining table. Cloth napkins folded like arrows. The good plates with the tiny cobalt ring that Mom only brings out when she wants to remind people who started the traditions. The cousins were there, an uncle I hadn't seen since Thanksgiving. Oliver in a crisp shirt that still had a faint crease on the sleeves from the packaging. He hugged me with one arm, and patted the back of my coat, like he was checking for a wallet. Dan, Mom sang, coming from the kitchen with a dish that steamed cinnamon and butter. There you are. Sit. Sit. We've got a schedule. She has an agenda for everything. Even meals. Dad stood at the head of the table with a practiced host smile. The kind that shows teeth but not warmth. He clinked his glass, and the room quieted. All those eyes turning the way, sunflowers follow light. Family. He began, lifting his drink. We're here, because we're stronger together. Because when one of us wins, we all win. I watched the way he measured the room. The cadence he liked to ride when he wanted agreement to feel inevitable. Mom took over. Tonight we're making the family fund official. Monthly contributions. Transparent and helpful. And, she added, laying a hand on my shoulder, Daniel has agreed to kick us off with a generous contribution from his thriving business. Polite laughs touched the napkins and glasses. Oliver looked down like he was embarrassed on my behalf. Which used to work on me. It didn't now. I felt Lena's knee against mine under the table. A steady second heartbeat. I stood. I did say I'd bring something. I said. Just not money. A ripple went through the room. Dad's smile stayed in place. But I saw it flicker around the edges. Daniel, he said. Warning, tucked under my name. I reached into my coat and pulled out the folder. The tab had a crease where I'd bent it and straightened it 10 times since we'd left the shop. I brought a record. I said. And I meant it. A timeline. I opened to the first page and read. 3 months ago. The message Mom sent to Aunt Rose. I cleared my throat and let my voice go flat. Not cruel. Just plain. Quote, don't invite Daniel's family to the dinner. He'll complain about the cost and we can't have that tonight. End quote. I set the printout on the table. The lilies made the air sweet. The paper felt heavy. You could hear the tiny scrape of a fork across a plate somewhere near the end of the table. My aunt looked at her hands. Oliver's face didn't do anything for a full second. Then the smirk he wears when he's uncomfortable started to build and stopped halfway. Like it had forgotten how to finish. I flipped to the second page. 2 months ago. I said. Dad's text. Since Oliver's kids have big expenses, maybe you could double your first contribution to the family fund. Just to get us rolling. I slid the phone screenshot next to the first page. Double. I said softly. Letting the word sit there and do its own work. Someone coughed. The kids had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when a room turns into a test they didn't know they'd be graded on. Lena touched Nora's shoulder. Theo's fingers found the hem of the tablecloth and rolled it. I kept going. Photos. I said. And held up prints from the party. We hadn't been invited to my parents' under a banner in glitter script. Oliver holding a sparkler over a cake. The cousins with their arms around each other, in front of a rented backdrop. I put those down too. Ink. Paper. Proof. Mom smiled. But it wasn't a smile that reached her eyes. It was the polite mask again. The one that looks like kindness from far away. Daniel. She began. Voice syrupy. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place. I said. Because the conversation always happens somewhere else. Inside texts. In parking lots. In kitchens where the door is swinging so you don't notice who isn't inside. Dad's jaw moved like he was chewing a thought. You're embarrassing your mother. He said. It was the sentence he used when I was 10 and spoke out of turn. I looked down at my hands. Clean, but with a thin line of oil under one nail I must have missed. I thought about the jack at the shop. About the paper sign Nora had colored. Embarrassment didn't fit me anymore. I took out the last page. Voicemail. I said. And tapped my phone until the speaker lit up. Dad's voice filled the room. Familiar and undeniable, son. Cover Oliver's truck payment. Just this once. The recording ended. And the silence that followed had a shape. It pressed into the corners and stared back at us. Oliver pushed his chair back an inch. This is petty. He said. Trying to sound outraged and landing on uncertain. You're keeping receipts like you're building a case. I am. I said. Because I was told our family is about fairness. Because when I asked why my kids sat empty-handed while yours opened a tower of gifts, I was told there wasn't money. Because then I was asked to pay more into a pot that buys your children tablets while mine are told to wait for the right moment. Mom blinked, like she was trying to reset the picture. We do so much for you. She said. We always have. We watch your kids. We invited you tonight. She picked up a napkin and folded it and unfolded it. The crease stayed. I remembered the heater on a cold morning. Turning bolts while my breath fogged. I remembered Lena's careful stitches on those scarves. I remembered Nora's face watching labels at the makeup dinner. The way hope leaked out of her slow and quiet. The room tilted a degree. And I felt something settle in me where shame used to sit. I'm not here to fight. I said. I'm here to draw a line. We won't be part of the fund. We won't be your emergency cash drawer. We won't pretend this is balanced when it isn't. We're fine on our own. I reached into my coat one last time and took out a small stack of cards. On the front, in purple and black, was the logo Nora had drawn Dan's Honest Garage. The O made into a little wrench. I placed one card on the table in front of my parents. We're expanding. I said. Not boasting. Just letting the fact have space. We're okay. Dad's face went red. He lifted his glass and set it down without drinking. You're making a scene. He said. In front of the children. I'm talking about the children. I answered. Mine. A chair scraped. Somewhere. A candle cracked as wax cooled unevenly against the glass. A tiny sound that sliced the quiet. My aunt murmured. He's right. Under her breath. Then covered her mouth like she hadn't meant to let it out. Oliver shot her a look. His confidence, the kind that floats on the assumption of agreement, wobbled. Mom stood up straight. Hand flat on the tablecloth as if smoothing out wrinkles could press the night back into shape. You don't talk to us like this. I'm talking to you exactly like this. I said. And surprised myself with how calm my voice sounded. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't flushed. I felt like someone had just opened a window in a room that had been stale for years. Nora's fingers slipped into Lena's. Theo looked at me with eyes so serious I wanted to pick him up like when he was 3 and hang all the jackets on him to make him laugh. Instead, I reached for my coat. We're leaving. I said. The same words from the makeup dinner, but without the tremor. Someone laughed, one of Oliver's friends at the far end of the table, then stopped when nobody followed. Mom's mouth opened and closed. At least stay for dessert. She tried. The old currency. There's pie. Maybe another time. Lena said gently. Standing too. She set her napkin on her plate in a perfect triangle. The way she always does. As if you can honor a place, even while you walk away from it. We moved through the hallway where the family photos hang in a perfect line, school pictures. Graduations. Oliver with his trophies. There was a gap in the middle where frames had been taken down for dusting and never put back. I noticed it for the first time and wondered what was meant to go there. Maybe nothing. Maybe the space was the point. At the door, Dad said, "You'll regret this." The final weapon that had worked on me since I was old enough to count. I looked at him and felt the truth. Land regret is what you feel when you betray yourself. I wasn't doing that anymore. Outside, the sky held that blue that comes right before dark. Soft and unsure. Nora buckled herself in and said, almost whispering, "Daddy, you didn't yell." In the rearview mirror, her eyes looked older than they had any right to be. "Didn't need to," I said, and started the car. The phone began buzzing before we hit the corner. Calls. Messages. The group chat lighting up like a slot machine. Overreacting. "We're family. You could have handled that privately." I turned the volume down and let the dashboard glow be the only light. When we got home, I put my phone face down on the counter and made hot chocolate in the chipped mugs with the pine trees on them. Lena cut the pie we brought and we ate it at our own table. The four of us and the quiet. In the morning, my phone had 18 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and a stack of texts long enough to scroll with a thumb for a full minute. I deleted them without listening. I saved one message. It was from my grandparents. Delivered at 6:11 a.m. Like they'd been awake worrying since dawn. My grandfather's voice, steadier than I remembered, said, "Proud of you for protecting your family, kid. Doors open here whenever you need to sit and breathe." My grandmother chimed in, "Bring the little ones. I've got buzzers." I listened twice. Then I pinned the message. After breakfast, I took Nora's drawing out of my wallet and taped it inside the cabinet where we keep the bowls. Every time I reached up for something, there it was, a small, bright reminder of the life we were building. By noon, Mom had posted a vague paragraph about healthy boundaries and misunderstandings with a photo of a garden path and the caption, "Choose peace." I chose silence. In the shop, a man in a blue cap came in for a break inspection and noticed the coloring books on the shelf. He asked if the candy was free. "Take 2. Theo told his son, solemn as a clerk. The bell over the door chimed when they left, and the sound felt like a new kind of holiday. That night, after we turned the sign to closed, Lena asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Tired. Yes. Relief that felt like my shoulders had finally slid down from somewhere near my ears. But also a thin ribbon of fear. Because lines change landscapes. And once you draw one, maps don't look the same. Like the truth is heavier than I expected. I said, "But it's the right weight." I locked up and we walked to the car. Somewhere, a neighbor's radio played an old song that I used to hear from Dad's speakers. And it didn't sting the way I thought it would. It just sounded like music. We drove home through streets that knew us. Past the corner, deli where the owner keeps juice boxes behind the counter for Nora and Theo. The light at Maple turned green the second we rolled up. It felt, stupidly, like permission. At bedtime, Theo asked, "Are we still a family if we don't go to Grandpa's?" I pulled the blanket up to his chin and said, "We're a family because we take care of each other." Nora, from her bed, added, "And because we don't let anyone treat us like we're last." I kissed their foreheads and sat on the floor between their rooms for a while, listening to their breathing, even out. The house settling around us with small, friendly noises. Before I slept, I unmuted one thread, only the one with my grandparents, and typed, "Thank you. We love you. See you Sunday." A bubble popped up almost immediately. "We'll have cinnamon rolls." My grandmother wrote. The next morning, I told Lena we'd drive out after the morning oil changes. She nodded. A smile that reached all the way to her eyes. I've started to understand that peace isn't always quiet. And quiet isn't always peace. Sometimes peace is a door closing with a soft click and a map redrawn in your own handwriting. Sometimes it is a folder of printouts on a table and the calm that follows after you say exactly what you mean. And sometimes it's as small as a purple logo taped inside a cabinet, reminding you that fairness isn't a word other people define for you, it's the life you decide to build. One choice at a time. Monday dawned gray and honest. I woke before everyone else. Made coffee in the chipped pine tree mug. And opened a blank note on my phone. If my family was going to keep telling a story in side chats and captions, I wanted to put the plain version somewhere I could stand behind later. No names. No heat. Just days. Quotes. And the shape of what happened. I wrote about Christmas in sentences you could balance on a ruler. I wrote the phrase Mom had used, "We couldn't afford gifts for your kids," and I wrote the sight of iPads being unwrapped 2 minutes later. I wrote about the makeup dinner with the Tower of Presents and the sentence, "We'll get them something once the fund is set up." I added screenshots with names, blacked out the request to double my contribution because Oliver's kids had big expenses. The voicemail asking me to cover his truck payment just this once. I ended with 3 lines. We won't pay into celebrations we aren't invited to. We won't let our kids sit through a holiday empty-handed. We won't be part of a fund that pretends fairness while practicing the opposite. I read it out loud to Lena. She didn't flinch. "If you post it," she said. We let it stand. No debates in the comments. Let the calm do the talking. At 8:02 a.m. I hit publish. The first minute was nothing. Then it was everything. The post jumped to 12 shares. Then 50. Friends I hadn't heard from in years sent messages like pebbles. "I see you." Same dynamic in my house. An old neighbor wrote, "We always noticed how you were treated. Just never knew what to say." The relatives thread swelled with exclamation points. "Take it down. This is private. You're humiliating people who raised you." I made a second cup of coffee. Flipped the phone face down. And opened the shop. By 9. We had a full day on the board breaks. À coulant leak. 2 oil changes. Wipers that had turned brittle over winter. Between invoices. My phone kept buzzing like a trapped insect. Oliver called 3 times. I let it ring until the 4th and answered. "What are you doing?" he said. "No hello. This is petty. You're turning people against Mom and Dad." I wrote what happened. I said, "If that turns people, then maybe they were looking for a handhold. You should have talked to me first." "I did," I said. "For years. I just didn't write it down." He exhaled sharp through his nose. "So, you want an apology?" "I want behavior that looks like the word family," I said. And hung up before the conversation could loop. At 10. Dad's voicemail arrived. The familiar sermon, loyalty. Privacy. How public words cannot be unsaid. He didn't mention the public moments my kids had been asked to sit through. Hands folded. He didn't mention that the words I'd quoted were theirs. Around noon. I took my sandwich to the step behind the bay. A message came from a cousin who never speaks up in threads. "Thank you for saying it. I've been the helper my whole life while my sister got the big gestures. I thought I was ungrateful for noticing." I typed. "Noticing isn't disloyal. It's a first draft of a boundary." And then deleted it. I settled on, "I hear you." And a single heart. By mid-afternoon, our waiting area looked like a small library. Theo had arranged the coloring books into neat stacks and staged the candy jar like a display. A man in a blue cap asked if the candy was really free. 2 pieces. Theo said solemnly. 1 for now. 1 for later. The man grinned and took exactly 2. The post kept spreading. A local community page shared it with the caption, "Family Dynamics. 101. An anonymous account left a comment under our business listing, owner stirs drama. 3 customers. Unprompted. Left honest 5-star reviews that said things like, explains problems without talking down to you, and gave my kid a coloring page while we waited." The overall rating didn't move. My pulse did. That evening we drove to my grandparents' place with a bag of puzzles. As promised. Grandma met us at the door with a dish towel over her shoulder like a uniform. Grandpa slid the matchbook under the wobbly table leg and said, "Engineering." Like always. No one asked for the blow-by-blow. They poured cocoa. Opened the puzzle box. And treated us like guests whose names were not attached to a debate. After we fit a small cluster of sky pieces together, Grandpa said, "Eyes on the cardboard. Truth told calmly is hard to argue with. People will try. Let them get tired." On the way home, the dashboard glowed amber and the kids fell asleep in a tangle of limbs and winter hats. For the first time in days, my chest loosened. We weren't exiled. We weren't alone. We'd stepped out of a circle and found other circles waiting. Tuesday morning. Mom texted, "Can we talk?" I let it sit for an hour. Then I called from the office with the door shut and the torque spec chart over my desk like a catechism. She started with the word embarrassed. She used it like a broom. You embarrassed the family. You embarrassed my children. I said softly. Twice. Silence stretched on the line. I could hear plates clink in her kitchen. The sound of a house that thinks it can outweigh a problem. We didn't think. She said finally. It was the truest sentence she'd given me in months. Then we start thinking. I said. Here are the rules if you want us back in rooms. 1. If there are gifts. Our kids are included, maybe smaller. Maybe different. But included. 2. No asking me to fund Oliver's expenses. 3. If we're not in the planning. We're not in the bill. 4. No side chat decisions about us. If you have a problem with me, say it to me. 4. She sounded almost offended at the number. 4. I said. Like the corners that keep a table steady. She breathed out. A sound halfway between surrender and relief. I'll try. Not a promise. A place to stand. After we hung up, I wrote the rules on a yellow legal pad and taped the page inside the office door. It hung a little crooked. I left it that way. Nora came in after school. Read the list. And tapped each line with her finger like a conductor setting tempo. Good. She said. Now it's official. By late Thursday, a flatbed tow truck backed up to the bay. Oliver climbed down. Cheeks wind red. Pride and panic mixed on his face. The truck's hood steamed. Alternator. I think. He said. Of course it was. He hovered near the door, like a man deciding which room he's allowed to enter. I can diagnose it and fix it. I said. You'll pay shop rate like everyone else. If you want to leave it and get a ride. The clipboard's on the counter. He nodded. Signed his name too hard. And on the line. How did you hear about us? He wrote, family. Scratched it out. And wrote Facebook. I watched the tow truck pull away. Calm spread through me like warm air, finding a cold room. This charging him like any customer wasn't punishment. It was a new gravity. As I locked up that night, a single text arrived from my aunt. Your parents want to meet. Neutral place. Pastor's office. Sunday at 3. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Neutral was doing a lot of work. Still. I felt something settle. If we were going to test whether the rules could stand. Better to do it in a room with chairs in a circle and a door that closed. I slipped the phone into my pocket. Flipped the sign to closed. And listened to the building. Exhale. Sometimes the next chapter isn't louder. It's just clearer. Sunday came in with rain that lacquered the streets. The church smelled like lemon cleaner and paper that had been handled by a lot of earnest hands. Pastor Reed greeted us with careful warmth. The kind you use when you're trying to hold more than one loyalty at once. The chairs were in a circle. As if geometry alone could keep us from leaning too hard in any one direction. Mom had a spiral notebook. Dad had a folded sheet, he kept smoothing flat. Oliver came late. Jaw tight. Damp hair pushed back, like he'd told himself to be reasonable in the parking lot. Pastor laid out ground rules, no crosstalk. No shouting. No digging up 10-year-old slights. As fresh ammunition. He nodded to me. I kept the recap minimal Christmas. The makeup dinner. The text about doubling my contribution. The voicemail about the truck payment. Then I said the only 4 sentences that matter going forward. If there are gifts, our kids are included. Don't ask me to fund Oliver's bills. If we aren't in the planning, we aren't in the bill. No more decisions about us in side chats. Mom said I'd made them look heartless. Dad said they'd helped us plenty over the years. And help should buy patience. Oliver said I was punishing his children. I answered each one steady. Not cruel. The kids aren't targets. The rules are for adults. Past help doesn't purchase present silence. If we want a table that doesn't wobble, the corners have to be the same length. Pastor didn't try to hug it into harmony. He looked at my parents. Can you accept those conditions? Mom recited them back. Voice tight. Like she was reading ingredients, she wasn't sure she wanted to cook with. Gifts even. No, asking Daniel to cover Oliver's expenses. Only planners pay. No side chats about his family. Dad added. We'll try. And for once, try sounded like a hinge instead of a dodge. We left without signatures. Just sentences that would prove themselves or collapse in the first strong wind. In the parking lot. Oliver caught my elbow. "You got what you wanted," he said. Not quite meeting my eyes. "I got what my kids need," I said. He looked at the wet asphalt as if there were an answer written on it. Monday hit like a drumline on the bay door. Half the city remembered wipers don't heal themselves. Between swaps and brake checks. A community group posted a glossy flyer announcing, "The Family Fund Mutual Aid for Relatives in Need." Complete with a QR code and a candid of me from some long-ago holiday lifting a turkey out of the oven. My name wasn't there. But the caption read, "Inspired by recent conversations about fairness." In the comments, people tagged me, as if I were the spokesperson. I typed a clear paragraph and read it to Lena before I hit send, clarifying that we are not participating in any family fund. Please don't use our names or images in promotions. We support helping children directly and quietly. Without strings. 10 minutes later. The post came down. Mom texted. "That was for optics. You're ruining the spirit." I put the phone face down and torqued a belt until it gave the little sing that says, "Enough." On Wednesday, the landlord of the empty bay next door stopped by. "Your place is hopping," he said, looking at the queue like he was counting rungs on a ladder. "If you want to knock through that wall, I'll cut month 1 in half." We walked the space. It smelled like dust and possibility. I signed with a pen that had oil under the clip and felt the future click a notch forward. Expansion wasn't bravado now, it was logistics square footage. Delivery windows. A second lift on backorder. A bigger parts shelf. Theo was already planning in his head. That same afternoon, an anonymous 1-star review landed on our page. Owner is unprofessional. Prefers long posts to real work. The profile picture was a sunset. Which is what people use when they don't want to wear their face. I wrote a courteous reply. "We're proud to serve with transparent pricing and reliable service. If you have a concern about work performed, please call the shop with your name and invoice number, so we can make it right." 10 minutes later. 3 regulars left detailed reviews on their own. The average didn't move. The knot in my chest did. Thursday. The alternator for Oliver's truck arrived. I installed it. Ran the tests. And called him with the total. He showed up with a paper card and an expression that wanted to be casual and surrendered to honest. "Thanks," he said, handing over payment. "I left something in there for your kids." I waited until he left to open the envelope, 2 tickets to the Science Museum exhibit Nora had been talking about for months. No notch. No conditions. I stuck them on the fridge, under a magnet, shaped like a wrench. Small correct things in small envelopes. I could work with that. Friday night. Dad texted, "Come by. Just you." His study smelled like old paper and the kind of aftershave people buy once and keep. He gestured to the chair across from the desk, the same one where I used to build lopsided Lego cars while he balanced checkbooks. I spoke to Pastor. He began. "And to your grandparents." He smoothed the same sheet again. "They think you were right to set rules." He swallowed. "I don't like how you did it. I don't like how we were living with it," I said. He looked at his hands. "I thought being a provider meant steering resources to where they made the biggest splash. Maybe it means making sure the table is level. Even if the plates look smaller. I've been unfair." The apology landed awkwardly. Like a tool dropped into thick grass. I picked it up. "Thank you," I said. "What next?" He blinked. "Birthdays," he said. "Neutral spot. You set a budget. I'll match it. No surprises." On my way out, I paused at the wall of family photographs. The empty rectangles I'd noticed the night we walked out were filled with a new frame, Nora and Theo cutting the ribbon at the shop opening. Faces serious with the importance of scissors. Dad came to stand beside me. "Your mother picked that one," he said. "She said we needed a fresher picture." I nodded. A small acknowledgement that still felt like a large thing. Sunday. The extended family thread lit up with something I hadn't expected. Reset barbecue this afternoon at the park. Potluck. Everyone welcome. Gifts optional. If you bring for kids, bring for all kids. The message sounded like someone had translated our rules through 3 different dialects and then taped them to a picnic. I said yes. Lena looked at me carefully. "You sure?" "We test bridges by walking across slowly," I said. The park wore its best version of early summer grass bright. Sky generous. I hauled the cooler. Lena carried a bowl the size of a tire filled with pasta salad. Nora brought a roll of butcher paper and a fistful of markers in case the little ones want to make signs. My aunt hugged me too long and whispered, "We are all trying," in a voice that sounded both brave and tired. Oliver anchored a pop-up tent without grumbling about the wind. Mom arrived with brownies and kept smoothing the foil, like it was a spell. Dad produced a small jar with a masking tape label that said, "Emergency equals medical. Rent. Groceries, receipts." He looked at me as if to ask, "Is this right?" I nodded. "Better," I said. "Not perfect. Not everything. Better." Near dusk. We all reached for the same tablecloth when a gust tried to flip at mine. Oliver's. My mother's. My aunt's. A cousin who'd kept quiet through every fight. Reflexes tell stories that words don't. That night, after we put the kids to bed, I found an envelope wedged under the office door. My name in my mother's careful cursive. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen me at 6. Oliver at 9. Both of us squinting into sun. Holding foam, airplanes like trophies. On the back, she'd written, "It wasn't always like this." Underneath, "Smaller, I am trying." I leaned against the door and let the sentence be exactly its size. Not an eraser. Not a trap. A small weight on the right side of the scale. I slid the photo under the glass on the counter next to Nora's purple logo. The bell over the door chimed as a customer came in the next morning. The sound of a place that opens on time. I glanced at the yellow legal pad taped inside the office door, our 4 rules. The corners that keep a table steady. Then I grabbed my rag. Stepped into the bay. And got back to work. St. Pre 2. My name is Logan Pierce. I'm 46 years old. And last month, I stood at my daughter's high school graduation party, thinking I was the proudest dad in the world until she got on the microphone and gutted me in front of 50 people. But let's rewind. My daughter, Ava, had just turned 18. Valedictorian. Full-ride scholarship to State University. She's got her mom's drive and my stubborn streak sometimes for better. Often for worse. The party was being hosted at my ex-wife's place. Olivia and I split when Ava was 7. But I never missed a weekend. Never skipped a support payment. Never flinched when it came to being her dad. Even when I wanted to scream. I stayed quiet for Ava's sake. Olivia remarried 4 years ago. Her husband, Trevor, is one of those guys who tries really hard to look rich. Designer belts with big logos. Bluetooth always in his ear. Acting like he's some real estate mogul when he mostly sells mid-tier properties in sketchy zip codes. He leases a Tesla. Wears knockoff Rolexes. And posts fake hustle quotes online like he invented motivation. Whatever. I figured if he made Olivia happy and kept a roof over Ava's head. Fine. I wasn't interested in relitigating old wounds. I just wanted to stay involved in my daughter's life. Over the years, I went above and beyond. Sure. The court ordered me to pay child support. But the $529 college savings plan I opened when Ava was born, that was all me. I added money to it every year. Birthdays. Bonuses. Tax returns, it all went into her future. By this year, the account had grown to just over $92. Ling ling ling. Ava knew about it. Olivia knew about it. It was our shared understanding this was Ava's college fund. But that wasn't all. I paid her phone bill. Her car insurance. Bought her first laptop. Funded her dance lessons. Even covered her senior trip to Paris, when Olivia said it was too much of a splurge. Ava never had to ask twice. So, when I showed up at the party with a Canon DSLR camera in hand, Ava's been getting into photography, I thought I'd nailed the perfect gift. Something useful. Thoughtful. From the heart. The kind of gift a dad gives. The backyard was crowded. Streamers. Fairy lights. Folding tables with awkward uncles. Trying to be cool. Olivia was flitting around in a pastel dress that screamed trying too hard. And Trevor was busy making sure everyone saw the bartender he'd hired. About an hour in, I was chatting with one of Ava's old middle school teachers when Trevor tapped his champagne glass. Everyone keyed down. I figured he was about to toast Ava, which was fine. Until it wasn't. He draped an arm over her shoulders and said, "I just want to say how proud I am of this brilliant young woman. Ava. You've worked so hard. And you deserve every good thing coming your way. He then pulled out a set of keys from his pocket and jingled them high, like he was tossing a bone to a crowd of dogs. These keys belong to your brand new car. Go check the driveway. That Honda Civic is yours. Quito. Applause. Whoops. People clapped like they'd just witnessed a Hallmark moment. Ava shrieked and hugged him like he'd cured cancer. I smiled. Even clapped. I was annoyed he hadn't run it by me. Sure, but it was a nice gesture. Ava deserved a celebration. Then she picked up the microphone. I should have walked away right then. Thank you so much. Trevor. She said. Voice bright and confident. I used to wonder what it would feel like to have a father who really showed up. Someone who went above and beyond. Someone who believed in me. Not just in words. But with actions. The words were sharp. But I assumed she was being poetic. She wasn't. My stepdad bought me a car. Ava continued. He didn't have to. But he did. Because he sees me. Because he cares. And because he's always looking out for my future. She looked directly at me. My biological dad never did anything like this. I guess now I know what it means to have someone who chooses to invest in you. Silence. Flat. Heavy. Suffocating. Olivia stared at the ground, like it had suddenly become interesting. Trevor stood there, smirking like a man who just conquered his enemy without firing a shot. I stood frozen. Holding the camera in a box. I no longer had any intention of unwrapping. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I walked up. Gave Ava a hug. And whispered. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. Then I walked out. Quiet. Dignified. Broken. The ride home was a blur of headlights and regrets. My hands clenched the wheel tighter than necessary. I played her speech in my head on repeat, each word sharper than